Geoffrey, nice to have you on here. Um, you are the owner of GPS Human Performance. And first things first, explain a little bit more about what GPS Human Performance is. Explain tactical strength and conditioning, because that's what you guys are all about. And
Yep.
then a little bit about your background and sort of how you got into the space.
Okay. I'll probably just start with the background because then it'll all just kind of like
Yeah,
feed into everything.
perfect.
Right out of high school, I went and played junior college football, and I was an
Sweet.
art major at the time. And after doing that, I played junior college lacrosse as well for like a year, and that was when I kind of was like, all right, I don't think this art thing is for me. It's one thing when you're in high school and then you get
Mhm.
around like kids that are really good at art. I was probably a
Yeah.
little too focused on sports at the time and training, so I made the pivot and I was going the physical education route. And then that led me to SUNY Cortland, which is state college in New York State, Southern Tier, south of Syracuse. And I had a really awesome advisor there that kind of steered me into athletic training because, unbeknownst to me, going physical education in the state of New York, there, she said at the time that would have been back in early 2000s. They at Cortland and another school, they'd graduate like 200 phys ed majors, and there would be two jobs in the entire state that would be open every year. And I was like, poof, okay. And she's like,
Wow.
I saw that you're taking this athletic training class. Like, is that something you're interested in? I was like, yeah, okay. Because it always interested me, the sports medicine side of things, because in high school, I had surgery on my wrist at one point, and I didn't have any access to an athletic trainer or physical therapist. So it basically is like I missed an entire season of football.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, well, that's cool if I would have had that. So then it's like a way to give back and do that. So I went the athletic training route. And then I also realized that was a way to get a master's degree. And so I finished up at Cortland. I took, I accepted a graduate assistant position at West Virginia, but that was going to be working in a high school setting. So I wasn't like super intrigued about that. Long story short, my program director at Cortland, she got a phone call from someone up at Syracuse that they had someone drop out, and so then I got like a last minute interview and ended up getting it. And I told West Virginia, hey, sorry, I want to like work with D1 athletes, and
Yeah.
so I got up to Syracuse, and it was probably the hardest like 2 years because it was you were basically working like a full-time job, but it was in the athletic training world, it was kind of
Mhm.
known as a place that, oof, man, it's very demanding up there. It's a lot of hours. Like the boss can be a bit much.
Yeah.
It was great real world experience. Like you were going to walk out of there having full capabilities to walk into any other athletic training room and be able to take care of athletes.
What
And
department were you in? Were you like what?
it was in the sports medicine department at
Okay.
Syracuse. So it was like the sports medicine department under the athletic department, and
So like all sports pretty much.
all sports. When you go in as like a male, there you the first year you're there, you're working football in the fall, and then when spring ball would kick back up, you're with them, and we'd get to bounce around with the other sports, basketball a little bit here and there, but basketball they don't have as many athletes, so
Hmm.
the head guy didn't need as much help with that, but we'd still get a rotation through. And then I lucked out in the 2 years I was there. I built a pretty good relationship with the head athletic trainer with the lacrosse team. So I got to work with them. And that was the 08, 09 seasons. And they ended up winning
Hmm.
two national championships. So that
That's
was
pretty
just
cool.
a fun, like two years like having that. But I mean, it was a ton of work. It was a grind. Managed to get a master's degree out of it too, which I don't really remember much, but
Yeah.
I got it done. I got through it. But during that time working with lacrosse, it was cool because the previous year before I got there, what I think it would have been like the '07 season, '06, '07. They used to have a graduate assistant strength coach like
Hmm.
work with the lacrosse team. And they kind of, I don't know if he just didn't have like the level of like authority over him. And so
Yeah.
like the athletes just like didn't really listen to him, didn't really do much. And so the assistant with football, who was in charge of that guy, took over those next years. And then like it was probably the first time I witnessed like a true change and like, holy cow, like these guys came a long way from when I saw him in the fall when he first took them over. I mean, kids were out there like puking it, just doing the conditioning stuff. And it was like all conditioning stuff they'd done before, but like
Yeah.
the intensity was so much higher.
Hmm.
And it was cool. So he's actually one of the assistant strength coaches with the Buffalo Bills
Oh, that's
now.
sick.
And his wife was one of the instructors down at Cortland. And she was a GA formerly at Syracuse. So there was like this big connection that kind of, it was like, not that it was destiny, but it kind of seemed like, hey, there's a good possibility maybe. And then after that, let's see. So that was like puts me 2009 spring, summer, trying to find job, trying like had interviews, and I turned down like two just because I was like, ah, man, do I really want to do like the athletic training thing? Because all you were dealing with was like, sadly, a large part of it is like you're just dealing with kids on their shittiest day. Like
Yeah.
they're injured, they're going through an ACL rehab, which is 9 months.
Hmm.
Some people a little shorter, but like for the most part, it's 9 months to a year, and they have miserable days. So then you have to be like the energy every single day. In turn, I
Hmm.
go and be a strength coach, and then you have to be the energy every day when people are walking in super
Yeah.
early in the morning too. But so I went and did an internship at the National Strength and Conditioning Association. And like
That's
my
cool.
my boss at Syracuse wasn't a big fan of me going and doing that. And I was like, well, like, what's another 3 months? Like, let me just like go do this. I can all like I have the certifications. I can always go back and do athletic training. It's not like those 3 months are only going to give me more of a connection into the weight room when because in the Division I setting, you're working hand in hand with the strength coaches. But
Yeah.
most strength coaches really don't want to deal with an injured athlete because they don't want to make anything worse. And
Hmm.
so, hey, yeah, I'd rather not work with them until they're full go. So I did that. And where the NSCA's headquarters are, that's out in Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs is where Fort Carson is. Fort Carson's where 10th Special Forces Group is. So when I got out there, the 10th Group soldiers would come in and train with us. And it was at that time, tactical strength conditioning had just kind of gotten like a little bit of like traction in the world because
What is tactical strength and conditioning?
so it's it usually like most people initially just think of the military,
Yeah.
Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. They just think of soldiers and their training. But really, I mean, it can apply to police officers, it can apply to firefighters, first responders, pretty much anyone who has to like use their body for their
Hmm.
job. Like it applies to.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a logger up in like the Pacific Northwest, like you need someone who has like a high level of functional fitness to not only like survive doing the job, but also be safe and not be a
Yeah.
liability for the crew. And that was kind of the cool thing to see with working with those 10th group guys is they all were super bought in. They'd never had access to strength and conditioning coaches before. What they usually would do for their like they would call it PT, like physical training is like
Hmm.
what their acronym was for. The Army loves acronyms. And so they're whoever was the fittest guy was who was in charge of
The
putting their
leader. Yeah.
PT together. And so you would have these different teams in 10th group. Like this one team would be like, hey, they'd be the guys that could outrun anyone. But because the fittest guy was a runner. So it was like that's all they would do. They would just run a ton. And then they'd have another guy that was like, he was really big into powerlifting. So then you have this one team that would be like really, really strong. And so it was cool to just see how diverse it was.
Yeah.
And as they got exposed to like, okay, yeah, like we'll take a little bit of that powerlifting stuff. We'll take a little bit of this running stuff. We're going to try to mix it all together because a soldier, like when they're on deployment, it's not like a soccer game. It's not like a football game where a football game, it's what, 7 seconds would be a long play.
Yeah.
Like they might have to ruck in 8 miles and then set up and like hit a target. And so then it's like all this like endurance, endurance, endurance. And now it's like we got to be dead sprint. Like we got to go. So I think I liked that more than just dealing with just a specific sport. Not
Hmm.
saying that that's easy. It's not easy by any stretch. Um, but there was much more diversity in the military setting. Plus, you're also dealing with anyone from like you could have an 18-year-old soldier like training with a guy that's late 40s that's been in for 20 years, that's been jumping out of an airplane, that has got a bad back, a bad knee, bad ankle, bad everything. Maybe even like got shot at some point and might be missing some muscle. And so did that whole internship there. And while I was there, the like bigwigs, like high level generals, like came through because they heard about how there was a massive reduction in injuries of the soldiers at 10th group, like, and also time missed. Like if a guy got hurt, like maybe he'd be out or on profile is what they would call it if someone was hurt.
Mhm.
And so their training would be adjusted. They wouldn't have to do what everyone else was doing. And so they saw that, oh wow, this is something that we probably should look into doing. And that was when they had started the Thor 3 program. So that's another acronym, Tactical Human Optimization, Rapid Rehabilitation, and Reconditioning. And so that's where I ended up working. It was almost like 3 years later. It was like a solid 2.5 years later. So I left that internship, went and worked at Vanderbilt for about a year, then moved back home to Rochester, New York, worked at the University of Rochester there, did that for a little stretch, went to another like sport performance clinic kind of set up in Skaneateles, New York, very, very briefly, and then got a phone call from my boss, Steve, down at Fort Bragg, who my resume got kicked on from a soldier who I worked with at the NSCA, who I got back, who was a 10th group guy, who I helped get back to full duty so he could deploy one last time. And so his job leading like out of the army when he was like retiring out was he was the God, basically like the right hand man of the person that was in charge of the Thor at 10th group. And so like he's like, hey, I can't guarantee you a job, but give me your resume. So I sent it off, and then I got hired in like the second or third round of like hiring.
Mhm.
And so and that was 2012. And then I was there for 2 years. And then naturally, because you're a government contractor, budget cuts came. And
Yeah.
so like the job went away, unfortunately, but not just me, it like all across the country, every other um, military branch had their own human performance like program piece that all these other people got axed too. So then it came down to you have 80 plus highly qualified strength conditioning professionals like looking for work. And there were strength conditioning coaches that came from Division I football programs that were heads of it,
Yeah.
because working with the military, like it was a way to give back, definitely, but it also was 40-hour work week. You don't have to travel with a team. There's no
Yeah.
weekends. Your responsibilities weren't like that. It wasn't as demanding, but it was super rewarding. And I loved it. So my boss was like, hey, like, hopefully the money's going to come back. Don't rush into doing anything. And that's what kind of brought about GPS Human Performance, which it's my initials, GPS. My middle name's Paul. So there were people that were at my gym for 3 years and had no idea. But so, yeah, so then I fired that up with a friend. And that was like October 2014, opened the doors, January 15, and then closed it down. We had new landlords come in and wanted to raise the rent, wanted to get me into like another long-term thing. And at the time when I opened the gym in Fayetteville, there were, I want to say we might have been the fifth gym. And by the time like 2019 rolled around, there was 11. And so then it was just like everyone was just like, pulling people from everyone
Yeah.
undercut. It was like,
Super saturated.
super saturated. Now, I was doing something totally different
Mhm.
because most of the other gyms were just primarily like CrossFit based gyms.
Okay.
So it really helped me that I had the background from Thor 3. People knew who I was in that regard if they like looked on the website and everything. So for them, I had I didn't have like highly competitive CrossFit athletes like want to come and be there just because that isn't what I did. And some of them would roll through and they're like, all right, this isn't really for me. But so I would get a lot of people that would kind of get lost in the shuffle on base, or they didn't know what they were doing and they didn't trust like the fittest guy in their unit or girl in their unit. So they wanted to come and like work with me. And that's what I did. And what led me into doing like kind of the online space was, yeah, I had the new landlord come in and wanted to raise the rates, but I kept having so many people go on deployment
Mhm.
and or they'd get transferred to a new base because that would happen every 2 or 3 years for people. And they still wanted to follow the programming. And at that point, I was just using, God, I want Zen Planner, I think is what I was using for
Okay.
like classes and all that. And there was a platform where you could put your workouts, but it wasn't intuitive. It was just basically like you might as well have been sending someone a Word document.
Yeah.
Um, so I looked around and I'd heard of a company called Train Heroic,
Hmm.
and it was early in their start too. So I reached out to them, and then I just started with them, and I've been with them ever since. And so I did it for my in-house athletes, so they had access to Train Heroic, and then I also basically just would sell the access to anyone that left, and they could still see like what we were doing every day in the gym. And I would that yeah that led me to like starting the online thing because that it made it a lot easier. Like
Yeah.
when I had to close, I mean, I didn't have to close, but I was like, man, I am giving these landlords a ton more money. And then so I was just like, all right, I'm gonna give it a go doing the online stuff and see what happens. And so I mean, that was December of 2019, and
That
then
was
COVID
great
hit.
timing. Yeah,
Yeah,
great
I'm
timing.
like, and I lucked out because I was already in full swing. I was already doing the online stuff, and so it like sadly like COVID definitely like crushed some businesses, but it kind of
Blew
helped
yours up.
because
Yeah.
I was already there doing it, and it also opened the door too for a lot more custom programming. Like at a lot because I do custom programming for people because some people don't have the time to go to a gym, and so they're limited on equipment space or whatever, and so I'll do custom programming for people in that regard. And so then like that just blew up even more as well. It's kind of like tapered back some, obviously,
Yeah.
because everything's like back open now and people can get back into a regular routine. And then everything is more expensive, so people don't have the level of expendable income that they did when everything was shut down because no one's
Hmm.
going out and doing anything. But yeah, that kind of like brings you up until now. It's like it's my fourth year of doing everything like remote. Well, fifth year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is technically my fifth year of doing everything like remotely, which has been fun. It's tough because I don't have to necessarily be anywhere every day, so
Yeah.
you kind of like stay on task with stuff because it's really easy when you work for yourself to just kind of kick stuff down the road, and
100%.
I definitely have a tendency to do that because I know how long it's going to take me to do certain things, and so I'm just like I can get it done tomorrow. I can get it done tomorrow.
Exactly.
And then like March Madness starts, so it's like, all right, I'm definitely not getting anything done. But when I know stuff like that is coming, I will hunker down for like 2 to 3 days, and I'm like, I'm gonna give myself a 2 week buffer here, so like I have some more wiggle room, and then I can just put out fires as they come, and not just have to have a grind session, so I can sit there and watch some March Madness.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a super unique, like I did not expect that because that understanding sort of the tactical strength and conditioning, I didn't know if you were a veteran or like where that all came from. So that's super cool because I'm a former college athlete. I played football as well. And so like getting and I know that whole sort of like D1 training, all that type stuff is like super different. And then utilize having the opportunity with the military and being able to do that is like super sick the way you're able to combine it. And that's whenever I started my business back in 2019. So that's like the perfect timing to be able to do online and really
Yeah,
like, excel there and being super niche into sort of that military aspect and bringing all the knowledge that you learn from being a college athlete and stuff is like super unique. And so that's an awesome selling point with what you're doing now. Um, Sort of my next thing moving on because I know with our clients we use Train Heroic and they some of them have one-on-one coaching, some of them are just selling their programs, they got subscription bases. So
yep.
my next question is like what is your main offer and like what are you seeing people feed into more, and what does your sort of customer journey look like, of like how they get started with you and sort of the trends that you see if they sort of level up to your one-on-one coaching, or what are those offerings?
Yeah. So primarily, like, I mean, the easiest thing is like just getting people into the team training. Like you just
Yep.
like pay the monthly subscription. You get like the new stuff every day, every week or whatever. And I usually do like 8-week training blocks. I name them after like military movies because that just kind of seemed like a fun thing to do. And so like I have that. I have like my tactical team on there. And so I have three teams on there because I also like coach Olympic weightlifting as
Oh, that's
well,
cool.
and competed in that for like a number of years. I'll say I'm loosely retired in it, but like retired from competing myself, still coach. But
Yeah.
I I kind of also am getting the itch to like get back and compete as well. So it's like I don't think I'll ever be able to say I'm fully retired. It's just like, all right, how long do my knees want to like hold up and my back like to
From
grind through
from
like the training
cleans
to
and
get
just,
there?
yeah.
But so yeah, so I have an Olympic weightlifting team that's on there. I also do like custom Olympic weightlifting, like training and coaching. I do that separate from Train Heroic. I usually just share a Google sheet because it's a lot easier to like kind of copy and paste like within a Google sheet, and then it's a lot easier to see notes in a Google sheet like from one week to another. So I'll
Mhm.
like, and they'll send me videos, and so I'll like reply in the Google sheet. So that's like the custom like remote coaching weightlifting piece that I have that's like kind of totally separate from Train Heroic. And
Yep.
then yeah, I have the tactical team, I have a weightlifting team, and then I have what I call my daily team. And that was what I would do on a daily basis in my gym. And that just kind of started was like people just wanted to keep doing that. And so I probably 80% of the people that are on that daily team are still people that were former gym members.
Yeah.
And the majority of people that I do get, it's word of mouth, like friend of a friend, or like, hey, my boss said I should like reach out to you, or my coworker, or like, my battle buddy or whatever. And so that's been the biggest like driver of like long term, like I guess retention would be the
Yep.
thing. And yeah, and so I'd love to just keep getting people on the team because it doesn't necessarily up my workload. Like whether I have 70 people or 700 people, I'm probably going to get a few more emails, a few more DMs, but in the grand scheme of things, I try to put so much detail and information into my like Train Heroic teams that like it kind of eliminates them having to ask questions. And
Yep.
then the nice thing in there is if people ask a question, everyone sees it.
Yeah, it's a community. Yeah.
It's like that's a massive like game changer because
100%.
the amount of times I would like in a class, right? I'd have a class at 4, class at 5, class at 6, class at 7. I'd be answering the same question over and over and over, like 6 or 7 times in one night. And then it's like, okay, like what am I doing wrong? Am I not explaining it well enough? Like, do I have to everyone's a little different. Everyone gets communication differently.
Mhm.
Everyone learns differently. So I try to put as many words as I can to describe exactly what I'm looking for. But then I'll also have a video demonstrating as well, and also be like, "Hey, any questions? Just let me know." And I'll get emails here and there, and then usually they kind of like trickle off. Like they don't. There's what's the thing like 20% of your like people are like 80% of your work or something.
Yep. Yeah.
There's some like 80-20 rule that I
Yeah.
never get right, but it's something like that. Like 80% of my work comes from 20% of like the people on my online
Yeah,
team.
exactly.
But I also know that like that 80% of work, all 100% are able to see it. So it's like
Exactly.
it's still got value there.
And
But
that's what's
yeah,
good, having the community and having people talk and answer each other's questions. So then like the more, you know, sort of the customer evangelists are able to answer the questions and they've learned, and then it shows like a new person that's in there is like, wow, they have all this knowledge just from being in here for six,
yeah.
7, 8, 9, 10 months. That's why it keeps them around. And that's what's awesome about having a community and being able to, do that, is because it really shows, and it's just proof. The proof is in the pudding at that point, which is super sick.
Yeah, well, and that's why CrossFit exploded like it did. sure, like there was the training aspect to it that people were getting results and getting in better shape and feeling good, but they were going and like going through something hard with 8 other people in class, 10 other people in class. And so it just built this community. And then like people just didn't want to let each other down. And like I had a CrossFit like affiliate as well, because like you
Mhm.
kind of almost had to if you were trying to open up like a small gym, like, and you didn't have CrossFit, like people be like, well, what are you doing then? Like I don't understand. You like you're not like a YMCA. You don't have all of this equipment. You're kind of bare bones in here. Isn't this just a CrossFit gym? And so usually I'd get people in the door. Like some of them would transition from doing the CrossFit stuff into doing like the tactical strength conditioning stuff that I would do. And
Yeah.
that was so like I really have no, I don't have anything against CrossFit. Because it literally exposed so many people to like the barbell,
Hmm.
and especially like
And
women. Like,
kettlebells and
yeah,
yeah,
like
everything.
because women, I mean, I'm sure women are
'Cause it's
still
all
into
functional
going to
training
the
at the
gym.
end of the day. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
all functional
yeah,
training.
yeah. And so it just it made it so much more accessible to like the everyday person. And that's kind of like the thing with like my tactical strength conditioning stuff. It's that like you don't have to be like a firefighter or in the army to like get great results from doing it. Like
Mhm.
there's nothing in it that's so specific. Rucking is probably the most like specific stuff. Or when I the army has their army combat fitness test, like their new PT test.
Mhm.
So like that is probably like the most specific thing that I'll ever like throw in or mix in. But I also realize like, well, I can build a program, like a 16-week program for people to use. And like with Trainer Rogue, now if someone buys it, they have it for life,
Yep,
which is cool, like awesome. Because initially it was like
exactly.
you'd only get access for like a year or whatever. And so people would just like, hey, like I don't have access anymore. So I just give them access again. Like I'm like, I don't know, like I'm totally okay with like giving stuff away for free. Like
Yeah.
if it if you're giving people value, I like to think that they're gonna
It
give
will come
me,
back around. Yeah.
yeah, like they're going to tell someone and then that's going to lead. Because I've had quite a few like opportunities, just haven't gotten like the ball across the goal line, like to get some of these, not a contract necessarily, but to work with these bigger units, like in the military, like right now doing what I'm doing, and just, hey, I'll create a whole team for you guys on Train Heroic, and it'll be your 600 soldiers that you got.
That's
And
that's that's a
that's
deal.
like,
That's sick.
yeah, and so that's what last year I kind of had that going, and the guy that was in charge, he'd followed my stuff. Like I had no idea. I didn't even realize like he was just a guy on the team, like following the programming, got himself back like into great shape, loved it, was singing its praises, and led a bunch of other people onto it, or they were buying like my like running programs or like my ACFT program. And then all of a sudden I get this kind of email, and the guy like reached out. He's like, hey, so I've been following your stuff. I'm kind of in a position that wondering if this might be something you're interested in. And it was, everything was going great. And then when it got to who could make the final decision, they were like, no, we're gonna go with this other company. And I know it was just because like I'm a one man operation,
Yeah.
and they just went with like the big name brand that,
The corporate people.
yeah, that's had like the contract before. Because when I was a
Mhm.
contractor, I technically worked for Athletes Performance Exos for
Yep.
like 1 year of it. The year
Yep.
before, it was just a health and technology company that just does contracts. And that like the contracting world is nuts. Like what the army pays like for a contractor, like what they pay the big company, and
Yeah.
then it trickles down to like the coach. It's mind blowing, mind blowing.
That's pretty cool. I didn't see it in that lens of like because I know government contracting and other business ventures like are is insane, but whenever you think about like coaching and stuff, I never thought about that. That's like a really cool approach.
Yeah, and well, and that's like the whole model. Like with a lot of these defense contractors, it's people. It's
Yeah.
not,
It's
it's
just
not like,
volumes of people
yeah,
all at once.
and they only get paid if the position's filled. So it's
Yeah.
like they want the position to be filled, so they're gonna fill
Exactly.
it. And so like Big Army now has spun off their version of like the Thor 3 program.
Mhm.
But I have a buddy who he was a graduate assistant with me at Syracuse. I got his resume to my boss. He ended up going to PT school after, and so he got hired right before we all got let go. So I felt so I felt so bad. Like so he got hired in, contract like goes to hell, and then like he gets let go. Thankfully, he was able to like go back and work like at the PT clinic he was at, and then but now he's back in working. Now he's a government employee. Like he did so well, boss advocated for him, and like he's back in. He's been in. Oof, I don't know how many years he's been where he's at now, but he's yeah, he's basically like set now. Is just going to keep doing that. So like the army side of it is really cool. It's super rewarding getting to work with like the soldiers. Like one of the my favorite things is just opening up my email and having an email from someone like, hey, like I got a PR, like I just scored the best I've ever done on my ACFT, or like I got through selection, like I made it. Like that's like I've helped. I don't even I'd have to like really go back and look to see, but um I've only ever had one person not get through selection. It was because they got hurt. They just got medically dropped. And it was just one of
Mhm.
those things. They were doing land nav, like twisted their knee up and like tore their meniscus and just couldn't finish. And
Yeah.
then ended up getting back out and getting through it like a year later. So it's cool. And it's so cool because how different every athlete is, like on the military side. Like you'll have like legit like D1 football players. Like I had
Mhm.
one of them like when I worked in Thor. And then I also would have like someone who didn't even play any high school sports.
Yeah, that's
Like
crazy. That's pretty cool.
they're
Yeah.
just in the army. And so that's where there's so much diversity when it comes to the training and you have to be adaptable. Because if you're just looking at it as like, well, I'm only dealing with like college football kids from 18 to 23, maybe, like it's a lot different. And I know like some of the strength coaches that we had, they struggled with it initially because they were just like I don't know what to do with this like 45-year-old like guy. And I was like, I mean, just talk to him. Like just treat him like a human being. Like I
Yeah.
mean, he's serving our country. Like he's been deployed a bunch. He's probably been in combat if he's here. Like he's special forces, so I'd assume he's probably been in combat. Like just talk to him. Like
Mhm.
he'll do whatever you tell him to do. I'm sure. But they
Yeah.
were he was like kind of like nervous or hesitant. And I think the thing that really helped me and benefited me was my athletic training background because
Yeah.
I had the whole sports medicine side of things. I was already so used to working with people that were hurt and like doing these long rehabs with people. So it was like, oh, cool. We got to modify some stuff for 2 weeks. Okay, that's fine. Not a problem. And so I ended up, the physical therapist would send me so many of like the return to, I always say return to play, but it's like, you know, return to like getting back to being full duty, active duty.
Mhm.
I get so many of those. And I think that helped me a bunch just getting more respect from like the higher ups because usually the people that were hurt they were usually like higher up like in the like army at like the schoolhouse there like where I worked so
Mhm.
it was cool like I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would still be doing it. Like I wouldn't have started my own thing. Like I would definitely still 100% be doing it, like especially now with the new gym that they're getting. I mean it's if I read it right, it's the same size as like Alabama's like football weight room.
Wow.
It's huge. It's
That's
massive,
awesome.
like 30,000 square feet, and then there's like an additional 20,000, I
Damn.
think, square feet. Yeah, I mean, it's like there's no excuses for anyone like to not be in great shape when
Yeah.
they're at the schoolhouse.
That's really cool. No, that's awesome to hear because that's what I was going to ask about is your acquisition funnels, but it's really cool to see like you're able to build this whole network and hearing all the different like government contracts or the military contracts and all these like different ways of going about acquiring new customers. I think that's like that opens up a whole nother perspective that I haven't thought about before. And it seems like, you really put the proof out there of like your product being so good and you having this background that you're able to organically just have this network that keeps referring people are sticking around. So that's awesome because that's typically what we do is like with who we work with is scaling through digital marketing, email, ads, like all of this. And, we really look to work with people that already have their product set because you have to have your product proven. It's not just, oh, one day thinking you're going to be a coach and, you start, running ads and stuff. It's like you really have to have it proven and, be have your niche selected and really understand what you are going to be selling to these people and, having testimonials and having a community. So it's really cool to see that you have that and, you're really dialed in with what you do. I think it's super cool. My last question being, where do you see yourself taking the business and like what's your mission and your goal for maybe the next year, next 5 years? Like, where do you see yourself taking, your business?
Yeah. Man, that's a good question. It's probably something I should really like think on too. Instead of trying to like come off the cuff with it.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Like I'm probably not a good businessman, like in the grand scheme of things. Like if I can get someone in front of me, like, and I can talk to someone, like I think I can sell them on it. But it's like,
Yep.
um, yeah, mission wise, like obviously want to keep growing. Like it'd be great to just have it be like fully, totally successful. Maybe have like more people reach out and want to talk to me about like what I do and what I do differently. And that's the thing. I don't think I really do anything that much different than anyone else.
Hmm.
Um, so just continue to grow it. And then, yeah, I mean, what else, what else really is there? I want to keep doing this like for forever. Like,
Yep.
I've never, I remember reading like a book, like when I first started, it was like Build to Sell or whatever.
Hmm.
Like, I think that was the book. And it was just about like building your business to sell it and then just start a
Yep.
new one. Oh God, like it was so hard to start it. There's no way I want to have to start something over again.
Yeah.
But in a sense, I did that like when I closed the brick and mortar and
Yep.
just like pivoted into, and it was it kind of was something that I even like thought about like I wanted to do back in, because in 2017 I started with Train Heroic. It was probably like a year later I was like, I kind of am getting bored with the gym. Not, or
Mhm.
maybe bored isn't the right way to say it. It was like
Just burnt out almost.
I was definitely toeing the line of being burnt out.
Yep.
Because we had a point where we had like 40 soldiers that were like members at the gym, and they all like got deployed like in a 6 week. And so it's like we just lost like how many thousands of dollars a month now. And it's like
Damn.
40 people don't just walk in your door the next day. And so like that's the kind of the thing with like the online space is if you can get enough people on your website, like conceivably, like people are coming in the door. Now it's just getting
Hmm.
them to stay. And that's like free trials. I'll give people free trials. If people like reach out, like and have questions about stuff, because I know some people are like afraid to ask questions or they don't want to ask a question like, hey, like this is my background. Like, what team do you think? Like, and people will do that, but I don't think enough people do that, to like truly try to figure out like what they're going to do. And they'll just hop from program to program to program and just try to see if something's going to fit and work for them. But yeah, like I just would love to like keep growing it and keep working with people, because helping people at the end of the day is probably the most enjoyable aspect of it. It it can be hard, it can be frustrating, because you definitely can end up with some people who it doesn't necessarily matter what you do. You can build the best program on paper, but if they're not going to like put forth the effort to do it, make the commitment, like it's never they're never going to get the results that they're hoping for or wanting.
100%. No, that's awesome, man. And you figure it out as you go, like it's always obviously you want to grow. And then there's always, like you said, you close down the gym. There's always ways to pivot and move differently and ways to frame your business. So you honestly just figure it out as you go and you just keep building and adding towards it. So it looks like you got, the grunt work done, of like setting up a great foundation. But I think it's super cool what you're doing. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I
Well,
really
Can,
appreciate
can
you
I can
hopping.
I can I ask you a
Oh,
couple questions?
yeah, 100%. Hold on. My
What
my
like
computer's about to die, so I'm gonna go charge it real quick.
Oh, okay.
All right, I'm good.
Because so what was your background in college? Like, what'd you go to school for?
Marketing. So I did
Okay.
marketing and finance. So sort of my story and how I really got into this. So growing up, I always played football, and so I went to a Division 3 school to play football, and my ultimate goal was to play Division 1 college football. And so I played there my freshman year, and then I transferred to Texas Tech.
Oh,
Actually
okay.
walked on to Texas Tech, made the team, did that whole thing, and then that was right at the beginning of 2020. So then the shutdown happened, and I knew growing up too, like in high school and stuff, I always thought about what I was going to do after. I'm like, I'm going to start my own business. I want to do something in fitness, whatever. And so during that time, it was like spring ball, and we went home, and my dad and I built our garage gym, and I started posting on social media, literally just like my workouts and stuff. And so I started posting on Instagram, and then I got on TikTok right when like the app opened up. And so I was one of the first guys on, TikTok. And so I started connecting with all these like fitness influencers, and when like 20,000 followers was a lot of followers on TikTok, because now people have like, crazy numbers. But I started like building my network. And at the time I was 20 years old, started building my network, and I created this brand called Yelp Club Fitness. And so we started making like performance gear and just like clothes. We literally were just like screen printing clothes and stuff. And so after the first year of doing that, we really blew up on social media, and I had this network of people, and we built a sick organic audience. We got up to
Yeah.
like 30,000 followers on Instagram. We had our YouTube. We started traveling around. I started flying my athletes out, just making
Shit.
content all together. And we were able to scale like pretty hard, a 7-figure run rate after a year. And I was doing this in my parents' garage. So I filled up my whole parents' garage to the brim with clothes, and we're just selling on Shopify. And whenever I was showing them the numbers, they're like, how the hell did you do this? Like, this is actually insane. And so whenever I went back, NIL wasn't a thing. So you weren't able to use your likeness to, profit. And so
Right.
I was like, you know what? Like, I don't have aspirations of going to the NFL or doing anything. Like, my ultimate goal was to be a Division One football player. So I was able to say that. And so I went back to Lubbock, Texas, where Texas Tech is, for a year, and was like, pretty much living out there, doing this whole thing. And then it got to a point where we are super successful that I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do this full time. And I started connecting, and I was a sophomore in college at this time. And so the end of my sophomore year, I'm like, I'm gonna do this full time. And I started getting reached out to from like a bunch of sports nutrition companies and fitness companies, because they sort of recognized,
How
yo,
did you?
this little company like did this and blew up organically. I didn't use paid ads. I didn't use anything. And so large companies were like, yo, could you do this for me? And so one of my buddies up in Boston, who, was working for me, he's one of my partners now for the Visionary Group. I was like, okay, how can we sell our services to these businesses? And so we sort of came up with the Visionary Group. And so we came out with it 2021. And we've been doing it obviously for a few years now. And so we really focus on, those sports nutrition companies, fitness companies, and running their paid ads, their emails, their organic social, creating influencer team and athletes. And so we were doing that and scaling and seeing really good success with these companies. And then about a couple years ago, we started working with Jason Brown Coaching. He's pretty big in the online coaching space. And my partner, Pat, is from the Northeast up in Boston. So he was working in person with them. And so we saw really good success working with them. We're like, let's really, because it's marketing's all the same thing, but we're so like niche down into fitness. I've always been an athlete. Everyone that
Yeah.
works at our company is like bodybuilding. We run marathons. We've done powerlifting competitions. Like, we've done everything. So we're really niche down into there. And so we really started seeing really good success with online fitness coaches. So we help those fitness brands as well as online fitness coaches. And so over the past, few years, really been doing that. And it's super cool because I really, it fell into my lap pretty early. And, it being such a game that always evolves, and paid advertising and email and all this stuff, like all the digital landscape's always
Right.
changing. And it's really in its infancy stage, that we really have a good advantage that we've been doing it for a few years now.
Yeah, you got a leg up on it. Now, like, do you find when it comes to marketing for like a service,
Mhm.
it's is it harder than like marketing for like, I just want to buy a hat, I want to buy a t-shirt. Like, is it
Service is a lot easier, better, and more profitable, because, like, for instance, like a Train Heroic, it's all about
the main metrics we look at is customer acquisition cost and lifetime value. Something like a hat or a shirt, for example, someone's coming and, buying a shirt from you and, spending the lifetime value of that customer maybe $300 versus if you have a really good product, say like a Train Heroic subscription model, and your lifetime value is $1,000 on a customer or $500 or even high ticket coaching. If you're charging $500 a month and your average customer is staying around for a year, the lifetime value of your customer is so high. So then you could spend more to acquire the customer. And so that's really what we like nail into, because it's very unpredictable. Something like, obviously, like you have supplements and stuff, people always come back and
Yeah.
reoccurring,
Yeah.
but we really focus on those people that have their product dialed in, that actually have a proven product that people stick around for a long time. It's easier for us whenever it's like, okay, it's a $20, purchase and they're staying one time. We only have, the profit margins 50%. We only have our acquisition costs cap is like $8. So then it makes our job harder versus if you are able to profitably acquire someone for $50, we have that $50 window. We're able to spend more money to make you more money. And then we're able to be more creative and versatile. So
Yeah.
that's really our whole business model is that. And that's why we love like online coaching and these like app subscription models and stuff, because it's like, it's, it's literally black and white. It's like, okay, are you profitable here? And you look at the
True.
metrics and then you're able to scale. And that's when people really achieve scale, is when have those numbers dialed in and you're able to just like make it work.
That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, because I got the DM from you, and then like I was like, I don't. At first, I was like, oh, is this spam? Like that's what I
Yeah.
thought. Like, because I would get like a bunch of like those, hey, rep our brand, like our new apparel line. I was like, all right, this is all just fake. Like this is all just
Yeah.
like. And then I was like, oh, this actually seems real. Like, and I like click. I'm like, oh, this is actual human. Like this is a person. Like they have
Yeah.
more than one post. I was like, yeah. So no, I'm really glad you like reached out. This is the first podcast I ever did, so that's it's also cool.
No, that's awesome. No, you provide really good insight, and I think it really shows like that you can do it with any sort of background and any sort of experience, and it's like really cool how like your background, how everything is so different. Because I it's really cool talking to so many different people, because a lot of people have nutrition backgrounds, or they've done this, or they're professional at former pro athletes, or played overseas, and
Yeah.
there's so many different ways to that you can like cut it. So it's really cool that you're the first person that has like a really military background, and first I've ever heard of tactical strength and conditioning. So
Yeah.
it's really cool to learn from that. But yeah, it was great having you on here and like really learning those things. And obviously we're in each other's networks now. So if
Yeah.
you ever,
That was awesome, man.
see anything or have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and you'll be seeing me around too. So
I
it was
appreciate
really
it, Cannon.
cool.
Thanks for having me,
Yes,
dude.
sir. Awesome. Well, it was awesome. I'll see you.
All right, bud. See ya.
Yes, sir. Peace out.